What's up, everybody? On a podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about some of the biggest things I want NHL 23 to add as well as change. Now, NHL 22 just came out. I understand the irony of this video, but I did it on purpose. Because here we are, another year, and are there things improved in NHL 22? Sure. Are there things that were, untouched entirely? And are big improvements necessary in some aspects of the game? And you could argue one way or the other. Yes, I do believe so. So I want to go over some of the things, some of which I've talked before, some of which I have not. I want to start with the fans, the crowd. You could argue presentation, and they've gone through different variations of presentation before in this game, showing like Doc, right, and all that, and kind of having almost like a pre-show, right, which I get. Here's the thing though, I've never really been into that. I don't even watch that in real world, even on my favorite, like Buffalo Sabres or my team. Sometimes I'll tune in the first like 5-10 minutes before, but in reality I don't care about that all that much, and you'll see throughout this video I care about the core gameplay. So the fans, even, it's not the biggest deal in the world if they're not, entirely fixed. However, let's be real here. The fans have been one of the most untouched, I think, in all sports games, not just NHL, have been just so untouched generally in the past, 10 plus years. They need, I don't even know, really, it's just making them a little bit more realistic, right? Having even, and I know people have even, said it before, you could have it where, like, people leave early. Like, that would be so cool. You could have it where if you're doing, like, a season, kind of like whether it's franchise or GM or, whatever, where, if your team sucks, let's say, maybe the auditorium or maybe, the arena will be, like, half full. Like, that's cool. I think that adds to the atmosphere. That adds to the atmosphere of the area. Beyond that, obviously, maybe making it more than 5 or 6 facial models, but even just something just as easy as not even filling the stadiums or the arenas all the way. I think that really goes a long way to kind of just make it a little bit more dynamic. Next thing, which I haven't actually ever talked about this before, but it's something that I thought of. I was like, you know what? That's kind of unique, and I haven't really heard this one before. Face-offs. For the love of Jesus Christ, can we get new? I've played these games, and I've said this before, the last 13, 14 years. Sometimes I lose track, but I've played it almost a decade and a half. And the face-offs have rarely been changed whatsoever. And you could say, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I just think there's so much better that you can do. Now, face-offs are going to go into my next major point. That's why I'm going to saying it right before it. Because what I want from face-offs is to make it more gritty. Okay, if you watch the real NHL, face-offs are not nearly as clean as they're portrayed in the video game, right? You win face-offs pretty much depending on, I guess, the stance you take, but winning face-offs cleanly is just what happens, right? It always goes back to a defender, whatever. Now, they obviously added things over time where, you can do the stance where you end up pushing it and you rely on your wingers to come in to kind of retrieve the puck, right? That's cool, and that's a little bit closer to real life hockey. But I think, again, the thing they're really missing is just that the grittiness, and what I'm really trying to say is that not everything is perfect. And again, that's really going to go into the next thing I want to talk about, and the biggest thing I think that this game has an issue with, but the face-offs are a problem that I kind of isolate completely on its own. It needs to be more chippy, like the puck bounces, right? Like when a ref throws it down, it's not always perfect. Now, I get it, it's a game, so things are automated and there's coding going on, but these are just things you work towards, you know what I mean? It's not something I expect, I guess the title of the video that I want it next year, but these are just things I want over time. I get the sense they're moving towards it, you know what I mean? Not literally doing the same thing every single year. That's kind of where I'm getting at, right? Again, puck bounces, the fact that you just do not win puck battles that nicely during a face-off, it's just not that good. A lot of times, the centers will end up falling on each other. They'll almost take each other completely out of the play for the first couple seconds of the puck drop in whatever zone they're in. That stuff happens all the time in real world hockey, and it can't happen in the game because it's not programmed towards that. So I would say that, and maybe chippy is the right word, maybe gritty. I hate using that because as Ted Nolan, the former horrible coach of the Buffalo Sabres, he would always say stuff like that, grit, heart. So I don't really like saying that, but just, I guess, more realistic is probably the best term. Okay, so The next thing, I have talked about this before, but I want to bring it back because it's something I've been very passionate about, and because I've been playing specifically NHL 21 at the time I'm recording this. This is a little bit before the video goes up. Like I said, in terms of like things going perfectly, that's pretty much what the game relies on, right? I mean, obviously, like your shots can be blocked and not every pass is like perfect. And the game has gone, I would say, a pretty long way, in a good way, of making, like if you pass behind a player, they have like the new kind of retrieval mechanics, right? Where a good player will kind of like bend, like have his stick go backwards and he'll feed it maybe between his legs, or he'll figure out a way to kind of catch it in stride. Honestly, I really like that. And they have made improvements in the last 2-3 years to make it a little bit more fluid in that way that you would see it. However, again, realistic and where everything is not perfect is really what real world hockey is about. There's a lot of bad passes. There's a lot of grinding work that happens in the corners and behind the net. There's a ton. There's also not a lot of space ever to operate. When you're going through the neutral zone, when you're defending, when you're on offense, there's very little room to actually maneuver in real world hockey, right? Normally, if a player gets a huge amount of space to do something, I mean, depending on the player, but it can result in a goal a lot of times, right? In the game, and again, this has been an issue I've talked about for years, the game's too big. The rink is too huge, because when you really look at it and see how big the rink is with your players, there's so much space, any length, width, anything. You could stack every player across the arena or across the rink and you wouldn't fill it, where in real world, like, you're just look at real world hockey. You do not have a lot of space to maneuver ever. And in the game, there's just too much. So I know that's asking for a lot, because basically what I'm asking for is two things. One, shrink the ice rink, like, substantially, so you really have very limited room to do things. It would make it more gritty. It would rely on stopping and starting and pivoting, and it would rely on things like that, which, granted, the game's not that great at. So really what I'd also be asking for is a complete overhaul to the moving mechanics of the game. Now, again, to be fair to the game, what they have done, I'd say, relatively well, the puck is pretty realistic. Shooting and how the puck reacts with shooting and wrist shots and slap shots and one-timers, they have gotten, I would say, much better as the years go on. Like, you can whiff on things, you can miss things, the shots seem pretty realistic, like where you would expect them to go. Like, I think they've done a really good job there. You keep that, I would argue, and then you just make it so that you need to rely more on literally it would be more on the analog sticks, right? Moving your character back, or your actual character is in any normal game, right? But a player in this in NHL, it would rely more on that. And yes, that would have to, then you would have to talk about poke checking, more like grabbing onto players, and those kind of like where they go on the edge of a penalty versus a non-penalty. I mean, it's tough. I have a lot of tough love for the NHL franchise, because I do think it is the best of the sports games. I think it's the most realistic of the sports games. I do think they care maybe the most, or maybe they just don't get so pressured by EA as much as everybody else does, FIFA, Madden, that they end up doing good products. I've always said that about NHL. I think it is the best in a lot of aspects, but that does not mean it is perfect, and it does not mean it can't get better. Goalies still can need improvements. I mean, goalies probably are the least realistic in terms of how they act versus their humans act. They have cut down on like the cheap kind of goals over the years. I would say, though, those are the real big thing. Maybe making goalies more, continue, and it depends on the year, right? But the goalies do tend every couple of years to get better. I wouldn't say there's like massive jumps year over year, but every couple of years you can tell the goalies have been worked on. So I would say goalies need a lot of work. The arena and the atmosphere just literally needs a change at all, because it's never been changed. Again, in terms of how you move your character, your player, and in terms of just not having everything be perfect. Passes are not always tape to tape. Again, a lot of hockey is literally watching players go, and maybe that's boring, and maybe you don't want to do that in the game, but ultimately, if you're trying to make a simulation, an NHL simulation game, which is what the game is, you need to do it. You know what I mean? Where a lot of hockey is just watching a player go back, forth, try to just get that extra couple steps on a defender, work for that free ice. You always hear, broadcasters always say, like, trying to find that open area and stuff. There's a reason why it's so difficult to get into an open area, is because everything is so packed. But in NHL, the game, you can stroll right in, and you just have, like, many feet of just open area around your character at any given time. And again, I think the mechanics with some of the stick work, I do think is a lot better now. Again, there's some things that are really good, and I think that you keep those things and you just work on the other things. So those would be the biggest things. Again, I think the atmosphere and, like, the fans, you could easily fix that in 1 year. Even the goalies, if you made that one of your main kind of, like, these are the main pillars that we want to fix for next year, I think you could fix the goalies. What I'm talking about with shrinking the rink and really making things less perfect and, fixing the face-off, stuff like that, that's something that I don't expect them to just snap their fingers and do. To be honest, the sad, depressing thing is I don't think it'll ever happen if they make a game a year. Really, these big changes that I'm talking about, how you fix Madden and FIFA, the only way you do that is by giving them more than a 9-month development cycle to make their games. That, as of right now, is still the exact same thing. It shouldn't be, but that's why we get the products that we get. So until that changes, again, these huge overhauls, I really just don't think are going to happen. Or if they do happen, they're going to happen very, very slowly over time. Again, as long as I see, like, trying to move towards what I'm talking about in this video, I'm fine with it. But let me know what you guys think, in the comments below, if there's anything I missed or anything you think needs a huge, and again, no game modes. I just, for this video, I want to talk about the fundamentals, right? How you actually play the game of hockey. In terms of adding modes, I mean, they've stripped the game bare quite a lot over the last, 10 years. There's a lot of, even like broken glass. Remember when they had that for like the 1 to 2 years? Like, there's been things, but these are some of the bigger issues I was thinking. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. I can definitely do more of these videos if you guys want to see it. If this video does well, I could do like a part 2 or do other things like this. Definitely let me know. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter or subscribe to my second channel or support us on Patreon or YouTube memberships, links for all of them are in the description below. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you all on the next video.